There comes a moment in life when the noise inside you becomes louder than the world outside. A moment when your thoughts no longer comfort you, your plans no longer guide you, and your heart whispers a truth you can't ignore anymore. That peace will not come from changing your life, but from changing where you look for it. Ibn Arabi taught that the doorway to peace is not out there. It is inside you, hidden beneath layers of fear, noise, desire, and distraction. Before meditation becomes a practice, it becomes a return to the heart you abandoned, the silence you avoided, the self you forgot, and the divine presence that never left you. If you have been restless, if your heart feels crowded, if your mind refuses to slow down, then these 7 teachings of Ibn Arabi are not just lessons. They are the map back to yourself. Let us begin the journey inward. Ibn Arabi teaches that the first step toward real meditation is learning how to enter silence. Not the silence around you, but the silence within you. Most people believe meditation means stopping thoughts or forcing the mind to become quiet. But Ibn Arabi explains something deeper. Silence is not something you create. Silence is something that is already present underneath the noise. The noise within you, the stress, the rushing thoughts, the memories, the worries, the conversations you replay. All of it is like waves on the surface of the ocean. They make the water appear restless. But dive just a little deeper, and you find stillness. Silence has always been there. Peace has always been there. It is just covered. Ibn Arabi says that when the servant sits in silence, the heart begins to return to its original state, calm, receptive, open. The heart is naturally designed to recognize divine presence, but that awareness becomes buried under daily noise. Meditation is not an escape from life. It is the art of returning to that inner awareness. When you sit quietly, breathing gently, you begin to notice something subtle. At first, the thoughts seem louder. The mind tries to pull you back into its chaos. But if you remain still, if you refuse to fight your thoughts and instead allow them to pass, a space slowly forms inside you. This inner space is where the divine presence becomes felt, not through sound, but through a gentle inward knowing. Ibn Arabi taught that Allah is closer to you than your own breath. But you cannot feel this closeness if your inner world is loud. Silence is the doorway through which this closeness becomes real. You stop chasing peace outside and begin uncovering the peace that was waiting inside you. This inner silence is not emptiness. It is full of awareness, full of clarity, full of the subtle presence of the one who created you. Ibn Arabi describes this state as the awakening of the heart, where you realize that peace does not come when your life becomes perfect. Peace comes the moment you step inside yourself and reconnect with the divine center. And here is the most beautiful part. You do not need long hours to experience this. Even a few moments of genuine inner silence can refresh your soul in a way no external pleasure can. Because in silence, you are not alone. In silence, you are not lost. In silence, you are returning. Meditation begins the day you stop searching for peace outside and start listening to the quiet call inside your heart. A call that has always been inviting you back to Allah. Ibn Arabi teaches that meditation is not a mental exercise. It is a heart exercise. The mind can become a battlefield, but the heart is the place where truth becomes clear. This is why he repeatedly emphasizes that the true seeker must descend from the head into the heart, because the heart is where the soul speaks, where the divine whispers, and where real transformation happens. Most people try to meditate by controlling their thoughts, but the mind was never designed to be the center of spiritual experience. The mind analyzes, compares, remembers, argues, and judges. It is useful, but it is restless. It jumps from one thought to another without rest. If you rely on your mind to give you peace, you will spend your whole life chasing something that keeps moving. Ibn Arabi explains that the heart, not the mind, is the throne of awareness. In the Kurstaban, Allah says, "Do they not have hearts with which they understand?" This means the heart can perceive what the mind cannot. It can recognize love, sincerity, presence, and truth without needing to think about it. The heart feels what the mind only theorizes. When you meditate with the heart, something beautiful happens. You begin to feel your breath instead of analyzing it. You begin to feel your existence instead of questioning it. You begin to feel Allah's closeness instead of trying to imagine it. Meditation becomes an inner experience, not a mental task. This shift from the mind to the heart is the turning point. You stop trying to silence your thoughts. Instead, you let your awareness sink deeper, like a stone settling at the bottom of a lake. The surface may remain noisy, but underneath lies stillness. The heart lives in that stillness. Ibn Arabi says the heart has hidden chambers, layers within layers, and each layer opens only when you enter it with sincerity and presence. When you sit in meditation and focus on the heart, you are not looking for anything outside. You are entering those chambers within yourself. You begin to sense an inner space that feels warm, open, and alive. That is the spiritual heart, the place where the divine presence becomes real. The more you sit with your heart, the more the heart softens. Hardness melts, worries dissolve, emotional tension loosens its grip. You begin to breathe differently, not just air, but ease. You begin to see differently, not just with your eyes, but with understanding. This is why Ibn Arabi said the heart is the true meeting place between the servant and the Lord. It is the doorway to peace, clarity, and certainty. When meditation becomes a journey inward, into the heart, you finally discover that the peace you were searching for was not far away. It was waiting just beneath your own ribs. And when the heart awakens, the entire being awakens with it. Meditation begins in silence, but it becomes real only when your awareness settles into the heart, the place where Allah has placed your deepest truth. Ibn Arabi teaches that the heart cannot see clearly as long as it is chained to attachments. Attachments are not just material things. They are anything that occupies your heart more than it should. Expectations, fears, relationships, outcomes, desires, opinions, memories, all of these can become knots inside you, and a knotted heart cannot experience peace. Most people think meditation is difficult because their mind is noisy, but Ibn Arabi reveals a deeper truth. Meditation becomes difficult because the heart is full. A heart filled with attachments becomes heavy, and heaviness does not allow stillness. You cannot hear the whisper of peace when you are holding on too tightly to the world. He says attachments create veils, thin layers that cover the light within you. Each attachment becomes a veil over your spiritual vision. When you sit to meditate, these veils rise as thoughts, worries, wants, and unresolved emotions. Instead of fighting them, Ibn Arabi teaches that you must simply observe them, acknowledge them, and let them pass. Every time you release an attachment, you remove a veil, and each veil removed brings more clarity. Detachment does not mean you stop loving people or stop caring about life. It means your heart becomes free from depending on anything other than Allah. You can have things, you can desire things, but they no longer control you. You no longer cling. You no longer fear losing what was never meant to stay forever. Ibn Arabi beautifully writes that the heart is designed to reflect the divine, but attachments distort this reflection. When you meditate and begin letting go, the heart slowly returns to its pure state, a mirror capable of showing reality clearly. Slowly, The restless thoughts become quiet, not because you force them, but because the heart loosened its grip on all that distracts it. Detachment creates a type of spaciousness inside you. Suddenly, you feel like you can breathe again. The pressure drops, the inner tension releases. You begin to recognize how much your attachments were affecting your emotions, your mood, your reactions, and even your relationship with Allah. Meditation becomes a process of surrendering each attachment one by one. The need to control outcomes, the fear of the unknown, the desire to impress people, the weight of past mistakes, the craving for praise, the grief of old wounds. As each one dissolves, you feel lighter, calmer, clearer. You begin to see that most of your suffering came from holding on too tightly. Freedom was always available, but you were carrying too much to experience it. Once the heart is freed, clarity enters automatically. You start seeing your life from a higher perspective. You understand your purpose more deeply. You feel Allah's guidance more clearly. You stop reacting emotionally and begin responding consciously. This clarity is the foundation of inner peace. Detachment is not losing anything. It is gaining yourself again. It is opening the space for Allah to fill your heart. And when Allah fills the heart, everything else finds its rightful place. Ibn Arabi teaches that meditation is not separate from worship. It is worship in one of its purest forms. It is the kind of worship that happens not on the tongue or in physical movement, but in the unseen depths of the heart. He says that when a person becomes aware of Allah in every breath, every moment, and every thought, they reach a state far more transformative than performing acts of worship without presence. Most people live their days on autopilot. They pray, but their hearts are wandering. They breathe, but they are unaware. They make decisions, but they are disconnected from intention. Ibn Arabi explains that this unconscious state is the greatest veil between a servant and the divine. Not a lack of prayer, not a lack of rituals, but a lack of awareness. He says that the heart becomes polished when the servant becomes present. Awareness, or hudo, is what wakes the soul from its sleep. It turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. Something as simple as breathing becomes meaningful when you do it with remembrance. Eating becomes worship when you do it with gratitude. Silence becomes worship when your heart is aware of the one who is listening. Meditation trains the heart to live in this awareness. When you sit quietly and observe your breath, you begin to recognize that every inhale is a gift, and every exhale is a release from Allah. When you notice your thoughts without fighting them, you realize that the mind is only a tool, not your master. When you sit in stillness, you start to feel the presence of the one who never leaves you. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that the greatest spiritual state is not to be free from thoughts, but to be aware of the one who created thoughts. Awareness changes the quality of your entire life. You stop rushing. You stop reacting blindly. You begin to move with intention, with depth, with sincerity. Your inner world shifts from chaos to calm, from confusion to clarity. Awareness becomes a light inside you. You begin to see the subtle signs, the peace in your breath, the wisdom behind your trials, the beauty in patience, the mercy hidden in delays. Ibn Arabi says, awareness is like opening your spiritual eyes. You start to witness what was always there but unnoticed. Every heartbeat becomes a reminder. Every moment becomes a meeting with the divine. Even in worship, awareness transforms everything. A prayer performed with presence becomes a doorway to closeness. A dua made with a conscious heart carries a different weight. A moment of reflection becomes a moment of awakening. Ibn Arabi says, the place of Allah's gaze is the heart, which means the more aware your heart becomes, the more you align yourself with divine attention. Meditation strengthens this awareness until it spreads into your everyday life. You begin to feel Allah in the quiet moments, in the difficult moments, in the joyful moments, and even in the moments when you feel lost. Awareness does not remove hardship, but it removes the loneliness inside hardship. When the heart becomes aware, worship evolves from an obligation into a living connection. You stop practicing faith only with your body and begin practicing it with your entire being. The world does not change, but you change. You become more patient, more present, more trusting, more alive. Awareness reveals the divine in every moment. And that awareness, that gentle, quiet, inner recognition, is one of the highest forms of worship Ibn Arabi ever taught. Ibn Arabi teaches that the soul does not grow through activity, noise, or constant movement. The soul grows in stillness. Stillness is not the absence of sound, it is the absence of inner turbulence. It is the moment when your heart, mind, and breath finally align. It is when the world outside softens long enough for you to hear the world inside. Modern life trains us to be in motion all the time, thinking, planning, worrying, achieving, comparing, reacting. This constant movement creates a subtle exhaustion, not of the body, but of the inner self. Ibn Arabi says, the soul becomes narrow when it is overwhelmed by the demands of life. Narrowness manifests as irritability, confusion, anxiety, heaviness, and emotional fatigue. You feel like you are carrying a weight you cannot name, but the moment you enter stillness, the soul begins to expand again. Ibn Arabi describes this expansion as a widening of the heart, a deep breath of the spirit, a gentle return to spaciousness. Stillness becomes a kind of inner medicine, not forced, not artificial, but natural and deeply healing. When you sit quietly, something profound begins to unfold. At first you feel restless. The mind throws old memories at you, unfinished conversations, worries about the future, fears you have buried, desires you have ignored. Many people give up here, thinking meditation is not working, but Ibn Arabi explains that this stage is necessary. Before the soul expands, it releases what is suffocating it. These thoughts are not obstacles. They are the dust being shaken off the heart. If you allow them to pass without judgment, the inner space slowly opens. You begin to notice gaps between your thoughts. You notice your breath becoming softer. You notice your body relaxing. You notice a gentle quietness forming, not around you, but within you. This quietness is the doorway to expansion. Ibn Arabi says, the soul is like a bird that has been trapped in a cage of constant thinking. When you sit in stillness, the cage door opens. The bird does not fly out immediately. It hesitates, unsure if freedom is real, but with patience, the bird begins to stretch its wings. This stretching is the expansion of the soul. It is the moment you remember what freedom feels like. In stillness, your inner world becomes spacious. Problems feel smaller. Anxiety loses its grip. Your breath becomes deeper, as if the soul itself is inhaling light. You begin to see your life from a higher perspective. Ibn Arabi teaches that the expanded soul does not drown in problems. It rises above them. What once felt overwhelming now feels manageable. What once felt dark now has space for light to enter. Stillness also awakens an inner wisdom that is often drowned out by noise. In silence, insights arise naturally, not forced, not imagined, but revealed. You begin to understand your emotions. Instead of being controlled by them, you see hidden patterns behind your experiences. You recognize blessings you were too distracted to notice. The expanded soul becomes receptive, open to guidance, open to inspiration, open to divine secrets. This is why Ibn Arabi says that stillness is not passive. It is one of the most active states of the heart. When the body becomes still, the soul begins its work. It heals, It listens. It reflects. It remembers. It reconnects with its source. The most beautiful part is that stillness softens the ego. The ego survives in movement, in noise, in comparison, in reaction, in control. But when you sit in stillness, the ego loses its power. It falls quiet, and in its quietness, the light of the soul shines more clearly. Ibn Arabi teaches that the expanded soul is spacious enough to contain both the joys and sorrows of life without being shaken. This is strength. This is resilience. This is inner maturity. With each moment of stillness, the soul becomes more spacious, more peaceful, more alive. You begin to feel an inner gentleness, a softness toward yourself, a calmness toward the world. You realize that you do not need to chase peace. Peace begins to rise from within you like a hidden spring. And when the soul expands, the heart opens even wider to Allah. In that opening, you discover the deepest truth. Stillness is not an escape from life. Stillness is where the soul meets its Lord. Stillness is where the servant remembers who they truly are. Stillness is where peace finally finds a home. Ibn Arabi teaches that the self is like a mirror. Most people only see the surface, blurred by dust, fogged by fear, distorted by wounds. But beneath all of this lies your true self, clear, luminous, and closer to Allah than you ever realized. Meditation is the slow and gentle act of wiping this mirror clean until you can finally recognize who you truly are. Most of us spend our lives identifying with the outer layers of the self, the personality, the habits, the emotions, the roles we play, the opinions people have about us. But Ibn Arabi explains that all of this is temporary clothing for the soul. It is not your essence. The true self lives underneath all these layers, untouched by the chaos of the world. When you begin to meditate, one of the first things you notice is how loud the mind is. You become aware of constant thoughts, worries, memories, fears, imagined conversations, judgments, and endless narratives. These thoughts create a false identity. You begin to believe you are your thoughts. You begin to believe your anxiety is you, your anger is you, your past is you, your mistakes are you. But Ibn Arabi says, these are only shadows passing across the mirror. They are not the mirror itself. Meditation creates the space for you to observe these thoughts without becoming them. You begin to see that your mind is speaking, but you are the one who hears it. Your emotions arise and fall, but you are the one who witnesses them. Your past appears in flashes, but you are the one who is aware of it. This awareness is your true self, silent, stable, luminous. As you sit in stillness, the false layers begin to loosen. The ego, which constantly says, I am this, I am that, becomes quiet. Without the noise of the ego, the deeper self begins to emerge. This self is not afraid. It does not feel unworthy. It does not doubt its purpose. It does not chase the world because it knows the world cannot define it. Ibn Arabi teaches that the soul carries a divine imprint. Inside you is a light that did not come from this world and cannot be dimmed by it. Meditation is the process of turning inward until you touch this light. For some, this feels like peace. For others, it feels like clarity. For others, it feels like a deep sense of being held, known, and guided. But the essence is the same, the soul recognizing itself. The deeper you go, the more you realize that your true self is not defined by what you have done, what you have lost, or what you fear. You begin to see your life from a higher view. You understand that your hardships shaped you, but did not define you. You understand that your mistakes taught you, but did not destroy you. You understand that your weaknesses humbled you, but did not erase your worth. Meditation reveals this truth gently, like dawn revealing the world without any effort. Ibn Arabi says that the greatest illusion is forgetting who you really are, and the greatest awakening is remembering. When the mind becomes quiet and the heart becomes open, you begin to sense your true identity, a servant of Allah, honored, guided, and filled with inner light. You realize you were never broken, only buried under layers of noise. From this state of inner clarity, life feels different. You make decisions from wisdom rather than fear. You speak from sincerity instead of insecurity. You respond with patience rather than reaction. You stop seeking validation because you now understand your value from within. This is self-recognition, not the ego recognizing its achievements, but the soul recognizing its origin. Ibn Arabi beautifully states that once the mirror of the heart is cleaned, it begins to reflect divine names: compassion, patience, wisdom, generosity, strength. These qualities rise naturally from the true self. You do not force them, they flow. Meditation makes space for this flow by clearing the inner dust that blocks it. The greatest transformation happens when you realize the presence of Allah within you is not metaphorical, it is real. Ibn Arabi explains that the human heart was designed as a vessel for divine light. When you connect with your true self, you are actually connecting with the place where Allah's mercy lands first, the core of your being. Meditation reveals that you are not empty. You are not lost. You are not weak. You are not alone. You are a soul carrying divine breath, walking through a temporary world, trying to remember the home you came from. And when you discover your true self, you also discover the true meaning of peace, the peace that stays with you, even when the world does not, a peace that rises from within and guides your steps, a peace that becomes your companion, a peace that no circumstance can steal. Meditation does not give you a new self. It gives you back the self you forgot, the self that was always pure, the self that was always enough, the self that was always connected to Allah. Ibn Arabi teaches that the deepest peace a human being can experience does not come from achieving goals, fixing life, or controlling outcomes. Real peace blossoms the moment you surrender, not in weakness, but in trust. Surrender is not giving up, it is giving over. It is placing your heart into the care of the one who created it. The human mind believes peace comes from certainty. It wants clear answers, predictable paths, and guaranteed outcomes. It wants life to obey its plans. And every time reality moves differently than expected, the mind becomes anxious, fearful, and restless. Ibn Arabi says this: restlessness comes from a false belief, the belief that you are the one in control. He teaches that true peace cannot enter a heart that is fighting life. As long as you resist what is written for you, the heart remains tight and troubled. As long as you cling to how things should be, your soul stays in conflict. But the moment you surrender, the moment you release the illusion of control, the heart opens. A space forms inside you, and in that space, peace finally descends. Meditation helps you reach this surrender. When you sit in stillness, you become aware of how much the mind tries to control everything. Conversations, relationships, timing, outcomes, people's opinions. But in meditation, you see clearly. Nothing is truly in your hands except your own effort and intention. The rest is written by Allah. This recognition is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to free you. Ibn Arabi explains that surrender is the highest spiritual state because it aligns your heart with the divine flow of life. You no longer push against reality. You move with it. You trust that what is unfolding is part of your story, even if you cannot understand it yet. You trust that Allah's plan is not just better. It is perfectly tailored to your spiritual growth. Surrender transforms pain. A person resisting a hardship suffers twice, once from the hardship itself, and once from the refusal to accept it. But a surrendered heart meets hardship differently. It breathes through it. It trusts that there is meaning behind it. It knows that every test carries a gift, even if the gift is hidden. This trust softens the pain. It brings clarity. It brings patience. It brings peace. Ibn Arabi writes that the one who surrenders becomes light, because the burden of life is no longer carried by the self alone. Allah carries what the heart cannot. The soul feels held, protected, and guided. Even in uncertainty, there is a quiet confidence. Even in difficulty, there is an inner ease. Surrender also deepens your relationship with Allah. When you stop trying to force outcomes, you create room for divine wisdom to appear. You begin to see signs more clearly. You notice moments of mercy you previously ignored. You recognize that delays were protection, that closed doors were redirections, that disappointments were lessons dressed in disguise. In this state, peace is no longer fragile. It no longer depends on circumstances, people, or achievements. It lives inside you because it is rooted in trust. Ibn Arabi says that when the heart trusts completely, it becomes like a calm lake. Even if stones are thrown into it, the water ripples gently and returns to stillness. Nothing can shake it for long. Meditation becomes the training ground for this surrender. Each time you notice a thought and let it go, you practice release. Each time you breathe through discomfort, you practice acceptance. Each time you return to the present moment, you practice trust. Over time, the ability to surrender in meditation begins to spill into your daily life. You stop forcing, you stop overthinking, you stop holding on to what was never meant to stay. You begin to live with ease. This does not mean life becomes perfect. It means your inner world becomes stable. Your heart remains soft, your mind remains clear, and your soul remains steady. You begin to flow with life instead of battling it. And in that flow, you discover a peace deeper than any peace you ever felt before. A peace that stays with you in joy and in sorrow, in clarity and in confusion, in gain and in loss. Ibn Arabi says that surrender is not the end of spiritual growth. It is the beginning. Once you surrender, your heart becomes an open space where divine wisdom, love, and tranquility can flow freely. You become a vessel, not for fear or control, but for peace. And perhaps the most comforting truth Ibn Arabi teaches is this: when you surrender to Allah, you never fall. You are always caught. You are always carried. You are always guided. Control exhausts the soul. Surrender frees it, and in that freedom, peace finds you. Gently, quietly, beautifully, exactly when you stop chasing and finally let go. In a world that constantly pulls you outward, Ibn Arabi reminds you of a truth most people never discover. The peace you are searching for has been waiting inside you all along. Silence is not empty. Stillness is not weakness. Surrender is not loss. Every moment you sit with your breath, every layer of fear you release, every step you take inward brings you closer to the self Allah created, the self that is calm, aware, spacious, and filled with light. Meditation is not an escape from life. It is how you finally learn to live. If these lessons touched your heart, let them become a practice. If they awaken something inside you, follow it. Peace does not come to the one who chases the world. It comes to the one who returns to their heart, because the path to peace, the path to clarity, the path to Allah begins within you.